The supercar market is all over the place right now, so I'm putting every car I own under the microscope to find out the truth. With all of the talk of financial storms, crashes and bubbles, let's uncover the real story behind the Shmeemobiles. Some of the cars in my collection have lost value faster than I could take delivery, while others have held firm or even thrown in a surprise. Today, we've got 20 cars, one spreadsheet, and an outcome that's more unexpected than you might think.
Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive into the real world of the dreaded depreciation. Before we get into each and every one of the cars in the collection, to figure out if this has been as bad as you might think, or perhaps otherwise, remember that this is a collection of cars that are really driven. We go on tons of road trips, adventures, building up those miles, sharing the experiences through the videos with the collection of cars that have literally been viewed billions of times. When it comes to some of them though, the driving that I do is plentiful. In fact, my fleet on average over the last few years has done over 70,000 miles a year. To put that into some perspective, the average UK driver does 7 or 8,000 miles a year. We are 10 times that with the collection. Now, I love to be transparent with you on this channel. It's all about living the supercar dream, the good and the bad. And every year on the channel anniversary, we have the update going car by car with all of its costs over the previous 12 months. But one thing we don't often talk about is where do the values sit, especially with some of the hot topic cars at the moment. And today I want to be open with you and go through them.
My collection has a bias towards track-focused supercars, with a splattering of different brands thrown in. I tend to go through waves, and we've seen that over the last decade with McLaren, then with Ford, before moving to AMG, and most recently with Ferrari, perhaps one of the most intriguing brands in terms of this video. However, we mix in muscle cars, a variety of hot hatches, some crazy projects, a wild hypercar, and different daily drivers as well. If investment was the pure goal, then of course these cars would never be driven as they are, which for me would be criminal. We recently spoke about the supercar bubble of recent years and how that has completely distorted perspectives of the market. So today I want to look through the myths and focus on some real numbers.
I'm not ignorant to the fact that because I create videos and share them through the channel across Shmee150, the Shmuseum, and throughout the business, it means that each of these cars are able to generate revenues. Now, while I'm lucky that that's the case on one hand, on the other hand, I also have to pay more for insurance and a lot more on servicing. I do keep a document for each and every single car, so I know exactly how well they're performing. If you know me, you probably would have imagined that would be the case. But remember, in addition to being able to earn some revenues from them, there are also some very high costs. You have financing, interest rates on some of them, insurance, very high, road tax, servicing, consumables, fuel, repairs sometimes, storage. There are lots of different costs involved in all of these. Now, today is not about that. It's not about the incomes and it's not about those individual expenditures. It's purely looking at the values. Because when I was a little kid and growing up, I was always given the impression that a new car would lose roughly half of its value in its first 3 years. That was the norm. Perhaps supercars would be a little bit stronger, but there's more to this story, so let's go sit in the lounge and go through some of the numbers. We're going to do this in chronological order, so starting with the car that I've owned for the longest and run all the way through to the latest acquisition to the collection. And I want to share a couple of things with you. The price that I paid for each of the cars. So we're not taking into account inflation. That gets very complicated once you start digging more into this, but we are then going to compare that to an approximate value of where each of these cars sits in today's market. Now, I say approximate because there are a few factors here. Number one, asking prices of the cars that are listed for sale don't necessarily represent what they're actually selling for. Some of the models, there aren't that many out there to even look at, and then a few of them I'm sure I'm going to overestimate, some of them I'm going to underestimate, but we're basically taking averages. So we'll run a running tally all the way through to the end and see exactly how that is going to shape up. So we begin with the car that I've owned the longest, my McLaren 675 LT Spider, the convertible version of the track-focused version of McLaren's first road car after they returned. After having the 12C, I had gone through the motions, eventually had a 675 LT Coupe, and at the time, McLaren said no Spider version was coming, but when it did get introduced, I sold the LT Coupe, managed to make a bit of a profit on it, and purchased this 1 of 500 Spider, thinking this would go on to be a pretty safe place to have some money. As such, I've driven it a lot. When it was brand new, we took it on a massive tour, Fuel Faction, where we drove through Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro. It's since done plenty of laps at the Nürburgring, the Green Hell. It's been to VMAX on the Autobahn, one of the craziest experiences I've ever had. A minute pinned at maximum speed early on a Sunday morning a few years back. It's continued though in the collection. We drive it quite often, and in fact recently it went through that 20,000 mile mark on an outing to Pure McLaren at Silverstone. So I love the car. I've done so much with it over the years. It's a bespoke one-of-one paint that we made, MSO Orion Purple, named after this dark purple with the blue sparkle in cerulean blue, looking like the Orion Nebula if you're into that side of things. So the LT cost me, to give you the numbers, back at the time, nearly 10 years ago, in summer 2016, £333,000. I thought it might hold, but in reality, with only a couple of them for sale today, it's currently worth in the ballpark of £200,000. That represents a loss of £133,000, which is not a great place to get us running with this. They've been very steady at that price, and I'd imagine it's going to stay around that again into the future from here. Next up, about 6 months later, so also over, well, around 9 years old, my Aston Martin Vantage GT8, the last final send-off of that generation of the V8 Vantage, the NA 4.7 litre engine, massive crazy aero, paying tribute to the wins at Le Mans and the World Endurance Championship, the GTE GT8 car, and one of only 150. Manual gearbox, all about the emotion. Another car I've done so much with, all the way leading in fact to this summer, taking it out to Monterey Car Week, driving through the United States to really cement it with its permanent spot in the collection. At the time, it was very expensive for what it is. It set me back £209,000, a lot more than the vanilla model of the V8 Vantage. I thought it might have done better because today they go up and down a little bit, but they're roughly sitting with, at the moment, about 16,000 miles on it, around £130,000. We're talking another loss, this time of around £79,000, and our running total therefore sits at minus £212,000, which is not how I wanted to get this started, but do bear with me. We move on then to the third longest I've owned a car, the Ford Focus RS Heritage Edition. One of the very final Focus RSs. In fact, there are only 50 of them, offered to the United Kingdom market as a result of the success of the model here, and they are literally the final 50 RS product cars from Ford. I've had some fun with it in the snow in the mountains, winter tyres and four-wheel drive. It's done a fair bit of daily driving, now sits on around 12,000 miles, and considering very few of these are taxed and actually driven, this one's done quite a bit, one of the top 2 or 3 in terms of mileage in the world. That car cost me originally, at list price, I was able to secure the one from my dealer, £40,000. And today, while some do ask an awful lot more, I'm going to put it in with the mileage at about 60,000. So we've made around £20,000 on that car, bringing our tally to minus 192,000, getting slightly better. Let's see where this continues. One of the most iconic Shmeemobiles comes next, my Ford GT. That car introduced to go back to Le Mans 50 years after the original, a stunning work of art, one of the most beautiful supercars I was going to say of recent years, but it was introduced, get this, 11 years ago. It's that old already. My car in its tribute Alan Mann Racing livery to link back to the Alan Mann Racing team that ran the GT40s here in the UK back in the 1960s, a car that's done multiple journeys over to the US, it's been to so many different events, and it's a Ford GT sitting on over 18,000 miles, which might not sound like a lot if you're talking about daily drivers, but when it comes to cars like Ford GTs, 18,000 is a massive number. It's done lots of different days out on track, on different continents, in many different countries, because that's what a car is all about. Now, when the GT was new, to import them into the United Kingdom, we actually had to pay quite a significant premium on the American cars to be able to do so due to the import VAT and the duty and conversions involved. So my GT cost me, from new, £556,000. Interestingly, at one point, it was probably worth 2.5 or 3 times that. In today's money, sadly not. I'm going to put my car in at £600,000. And I know the Americans out there are thinking, how on earth is a Ford GT only about $750,000 to $800,000? But the UK market for them is incredibly soft right now. I have confidence it will come back again in the future due to how special that car is. But that means it's made £44,000. So our running total is updated to minus £148,000. We're not doing very well here. A dramatic swing is coming, because next was the Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG Black Series, the car that was originally in Himalaya Grey before I repainted it to Mystic Blue, an original Mercedes colour, doing that work at Chartwell, my dream car in my dream spec, and then upgrading the audio, upgrading the exhaust system with Rentec, and doing so many other changes, adventures, and fun things with it. Now, I bought that car at the start of 2020. We all know what came a couple of months into that year, and for a while I was absolutely kicking myself. What have I done? The worst time to buy an expensive asset like that. Is it about to be an absolute disaster? It's turned out to be really quite a good purchase. In the time since, it's gone from 6,000 miles all the way up to about 27,000 miles. We've had a ton of fun with it. Living in Germany at the time as well as the UK, I kept it out there for a while, drove it plenty of times on the Autobahn, have had that V8 absolutely roaring away, and it's one of my most iconic favourite cars to ever exist. So it cost me, back at the time, a German left-hand drive car, a total, once paid in pounds, of £340,000, which in today's market is a very good value SLS Black Series, because that car would now be worth, and again, it's very arbitrary on one of these, something in the ballpark of £550,000. That is a huge increase of around £210,000 from what it cost me, bringing our running tally to £62,000 in the green, the right way, after the 5 cars that we have had so far. Next, after the SLS, in the US, when I was based out there, I bought my Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 in Grabber Lime, one of the ultimate American muscle cars, with the idea that I would eventually import it to the UK, as I have done. But initially, we had it in Florida in the sunshine. We did a huge tour across the United States, going all the way coast to coast, before also joining Gumball 3000 from Toronto down to Miami, where I then brought it over to England, registered it, dealt with everything on that front, particularly in terms of having to pay all of the taxes to get it properly registered as a private car here. That added a hefty whack to the price when you look at the market in the US, and it means it's quite an anomaly over here as well, because I think there are only less than 10 GT500s in the UK, and I believe only 3 of them are with the carbon fiber track pack, which is like your Porsche Weissach package. It's the more desirable specification. So that cost me in total, to buy, to import, to pay everything and have it registered, £95,000. I believe, though, here, at the moment, it should fetch $120,000. So plus 25,000 on the Ford Mustang, up to 87,000 at our running total, which is a great place to be. And you've probably picked up a theme here. We've had 3 Fords, and they've all gone up from new, which is fantastic, because that's not something you might normally expect. We're back to a Mercedes, though. Next is the AMG GT Black Series, a very personal car to me, not only because of what we've done with it, but the story. Being involved with AMG when it was presented to the world, sneaking into the factory to reveal it in their original trailer, before then taking delivery of mine, and given solar beam yellow wasn't an option, back to Chartwell, back to a respray, and starting a very big journey ahead. It's done 40,000 miles now, just shy. It's been everywhere. It's been to the Middle East, driving it in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. It's been to the United States. In fact, it's been through over 30 states in America, and it's been in Europe up to the Arctic Circle, drifting on the frozen lakes at the top of Sweden, and all the way down to Romania, to Bucharest, and driving the famous Top Gear road, the Transfăgărășan Highway. That is a car that really, to me, is what road tripping and supercars and performance is all about. So many track days at COTA, the Nürburgring, at various UK tracks, just all over the place. I didn't mention the mileage of the GT500, about 15,000, 16,000. That's probably average for one of those. But AMG GT Black Series cost me the UK retail price, which was fixed for every car. You couldn't change the options, just the colour, and they all had the same price. They were all £335,000. A delivery mileage car today would be worth north of 400. Mine is such a unique one, considering the mileage and the colour change, so I'm going to put it in at just 320,000, so down about 15,000 to our running total now of 72,000 in total. Hard to say exactly where a car like that would sit. Next, a very personal car which will never be for sale is the OG Shmeemobile, my Aston Martin V8 Vantage Roadster. The first video I made talking to a camera on the Shmee150 channel was driving this car back well, a decade and a half ago, let's just say, a very young Tim behind the wheel. Now, that car I bought back through a strange series of events. After selling it in 2012, in 2021, 9 years later, we tracked it down and I rebought it for £44,000. That felt quite reasonable to the market at the time. That's about what the cars that were advertised, 4.7 facelift roadsters, of course, in good shape with fairly low mileage, a little over 30,000. Today's money, though, it will have dropped from that 44,000 down to about 36,000. So we're down 8,000 on that car to our running total of 64,000. But you know what? It's a special car. That could drop to zero and I'm still not selling it. The next car is the quirkiest in the collection, the one that many people who come and visit ask me, why is this here? My original 1.2 Renault Clio. You guys will know it as the tribute to the first car that I had ever owned when I was 17, the car that gave me the freedom to go and travel, living in the countryside, to go visit friends. When I was 18, I took it on my first ever road trip to France to go skiing. All of those memories you have with your first car and the freedom that it brings to your life. We couldn't get the original, but we did track down the cube, the lump of metal, after it had been involved in an accident and scrapped. So we bought a tribute to it, a car with a plan that we would eventually go on to go ahead with, to do an engine swap, to stick a Clio 182's 2-litre, making about 200 horsepower, into a car that looks completely like the regular 1.2. Not only was the engine swapped, but the suspension and a bunch of other upgrades. But on the face of it, still an original, normal ride height 1.2, just now with some flames popping out between shifts. An absolute riot to drive. Now, how do you value something like this? Because if you took all of the parts out, they'll be worth more than the car. It cost me about £1,000. I'm just going to say it's worth £1,000 in today's market, because the reality is we're not going to sell something like that. So it keeps our running total at £64,000, despite having barely driven any miles with it. Unlike the next car, which is bad news, the Ferrari SF90 Stradale. As we spoke recently, the poster child for depreciation, and it doesn't help that I've driven it nearly 10,000 miles. That probably wasn't the wisest move of my life. However, it was my first Ferrari that I had ordered from new. So building the specification, taking delivery of it in Italy, and doing so much with it. It was such a game changer in terms of the experience. Having 1,000 horsepower in a hybrid, I'm going to call it verging on hypercar, because the performance is really at that level, and such a cool thing. You know, from taking delivery of it and going all around Europe, a massive tour. I did about 4,000 miles in the first 2 weeks, including some laps of the Nürburgring. We've done drag races, we've been to tons of events. We even put a ski box on the roof and some winter tires, and went down to the mountains to attend the ice. With the lack of luggage space in the car, the ski box pretty necessary, but just a unique thing. Painting that in blue electrico to match the car, really special. Just a few too many miles, because if you go back to the video where I introduced the spec to you and ran through all of the details and options, it came in at £465,000. Not unreasonable for what you got, but if you look at what it's worth today, which is about £265,000, it's lost 200 grand, which is not ideal. So our running tally is now negative 136,000. And it might not get much better from here. Next though, another Renault, the Clio V6, a car that the guys picked up that had been living in a shed with a mouse in it, completely untouched for many years, in an absolute state. And this is a modern classic. It's a kind of car that in recent years has really bubbled, softened off a little bit now. But my car was obviously very cheap because it needed a lot of work. It went to Scott at SG Motorsport, who did pretty much everything. Engine out, new clutch, lightweight flywheel, brakes, suspension, whatever you can think of. It went to Godleman's to have the shell painted, to be done in acid yellow, one of my favourite colours from the Clio V6. And overall, it's been a lot of fun, and I think with the work that went into it, I'm probably not likely to sell it anytime, but I put in, hard to calculate, but roughly £42,000. In today's market, it's probably worth a touch more, maybe 50,000 to the right buyer at an auction, so we can say plus £8,000, bringing our running negative total down to minus 128,000. The next one's going to be a little bit tricky. The Zenvo TSRS. My first true hypercar, the car built in Denmark, totally bespoke, lots of carbon fibre, twin supercharged V8, the crazy wing as you know, unique one-of-one spec, not that they are common cars to begin with, in fact, it's the only one in the United Kingdom. But after pulling back the covers at the factory in Præstø in Denmark, we took it straight to Supercar Owners Circle, chased the Bugatti La Voiture Noire and so many other amazing cars. Over the years since, it's done a host of different events, it's been on display loads of times, it's been back to SOC for some drag races and things as well, and it's done a total of about 5,000 miles. And I know what some of you are thinking, you never drive it, 5,000 miles is nothing. But actually, for 3 years of ownership of a car of that level, 5,000 miles, about 8,000 kilometers, is probably a lot more than the average, especially when you consider it's part of a bigger fleet of cars. Now, it's very hard when it comes to this, and I'm sorry I'm going to frustrate some of you. Other than saying it costs a seven-figure sum of money, I'm not going to be more specific with it. It's today, though, worth exactly what I bought it for because I've had an offer of that. So if I was to sell it, I'm evens on the car, so we're just going to put it down as 0 and keep that running tally of minus 128,000 up to this point. This isn't getting any better right now. Ferrari 296 GTS. Absolutely love it. One of the best cars in the entire world to go and drive. Our car spec'd in Rosso Dino to link back to the original Dino of the 60s, the entry-level 6-cylinder baby Ferrari, if you will. The 296, though, with over 800 horsepower, is a rocket ship. I think it looks amazing and it's incredible to drive. Admittedly, I've not done all that much with it. The car only has about 2,500 miles in 2 years of ownership. It has done a road trip to Germany and some laps of the Nürburgring, but it's been more of a local, more dailyable supercar because it's quite practical, it's quite comfortable, it's quite easy to drive. So as a result, it's not really done any big tours per se. Now, I don't have any regrets about buying it. It's been a wonderful experience owning, and it will be for sale at some point in the not too distant future. Part of that is because it's depreciated from, as with the SF90, the spec video I did when it was brand new, its list price of £352,000. Pretty hefty spec we did with dual tone interiors and different options. And today's market value for my car with a low mileage and a unique spec, something like £230,000, representing a depreciation of 122,000 and bringing our total to a painful head-scratching negative £250,000, £250,000 down across the fleet. We've got another Ferrari up next as well. The Puro Sangue. Now, I hear people talking about Puro Sangues depreciating, but wait for this one because it might be a bit of a surprise. My car is spec'd to match my original Ferrari FF in Blue Le Mans. We did the same with this, with silver wheels, with red calipers, but a slight mix-up to the interior, or change-up I should say, not mix-up because I did it as I wanted it, into Koyo and Blue Sterling, the tan and navy blue. The Puro Sangue has done a lot of winter tours, spent a lot of time with winter tyres fitted, a lot of time as well on the road. It's been multiple times now across the continent. It's done a fair bit of daily driving, and it's done a lot of taking us to the reveals of new cars for the channel as well. It's a wonderful way to travel for people in comfort, in style, with a V12, which sounds phenomenal. And a car, honestly, having owned the FF and then a Lusso and then another Lusso, fits so well into the way that I use these cars. It's one of the go-to cars for me from the entire collection. Now, my Puro Sangue is spec'd pretty highly. It has all of the exterior carbon, it has the very expensive glass roof, dual-tone interior, lots of the gadgets and gizmos, and it came in at £387,000. And I hear people talking all the time about Puro Sangues collapsing in value, but the reality is my car with around 7,000 miles on it is still going to sit somewhere on the market today at about £310,000. So that represents a loss of £77,000, which, don't get me wrong, is not great, bringing our total to minus £327,000, which is horrible. But to have only lost, what, off the top of my head, something like 20-25% in 2 full years is nothing. Because when I bought a 2.5-year-old FF, it had lost about 50% of its value. So the car now holding better than they did 10 years ago. Some slightly better news we could say next is the Porsche 914. Buying a car in a million different pieces, taking it to our friends at Yorkshire Car Restoration, who've done a lot of work to the rust patches, as it became nicknamed, given the amount of holes that it actually had in the bodywork, and starting the process to put it all back together. It's been repainted in Ruby Star, the famous Porsche colour, and now we've just got to track down more of the components and parts that are needed before it's going to come back into one piece. That car, as it began, cost me a massive £14,000. In good shape, it would be more like 30, 35, maybe that type of ballpark. I'm just going to put it in, it's still worth £14,000 because until it's finished, we can't really give a final figure. So we're zeroed on that. We're still at minus 327. Oh, what's going on here? We've got a surprise up next though. My current actual daily driver, the Fiat 500 Abarth Ferrari Dealer Edition. It is a 500 Abarth because it is from that era before it became the Abarth 500 or the 595s and everything that came later. It is one of 200, it's 200 of 200 in fact. The special version of the Fiat 500s that Ferrari dealers used as their demo cars. You drop off your 458 for a service, they'd give you one of those to go and run around with. So each dealer basically got one, part of lowering fleet averages back at the time when emissions started to become a discussion point. I've done exactly 1,000 miles with it. In fact, tonight it will have driven 1,000 miles once I've taken it back home. Did a trip to Paris to go to Shmeemobiles and the RM Sotheby's auction there earlier in the year. It's otherwise just done daily driving, so it does a couple of miles here and there, just around and about, keeping it running. But I love it. Manual, 140 horsepower, front wheel drive. It's a lot of fun. I bought it for £16,000, which was an absolute bargain because these things trade for nearly double that most of the time. The car's probably worth more like 30,000 plus 14. A slight knock back on our running total to minus 313,000. Still not getting much better, is it? Next up is my other daily driver, the BMW M2 that I picked up at the very tail end of last year. It's a G87 LCI, the Lifecycle Impulse, the facelift, the update, which I picked up on an amazing end of year deal. And it hasn't been on any specific road trip or anything like that. But of course you see as we take the car on the Shmeemuseum channel to different events, traveling around, just using it as an A to B car to get to places. It's done about 5,500 miles already, which is actually quite surprising for me when I think about what I've actually done with it and when it's been on video or not. But I don't really have any plans to take it to another country. It's not like that. It's on a more discreet number plate as much as it can be in the bright Sao Paulo yellow. It's been a car that I just use for commuting around, going to visit people, having meetings, getting to places I need to go. I got it for £57,000. And what's really interesting to me is that the market has actually held up very well on the LCI M2s. And I think today it would be around 50,000. So it will be departing at some point, around a £7,000 loss. Our tally's still at minus 320,000. And with the next car, it's not getting any better. The Ferrari 12 Cilindri, the 12-cylinder. I love this car. My first from new mid-front Ferrari two-seat GT car. V12 absolutely sings. I love how it looks and I love how we spec'd it, even if it's not to everybody's tastes. It links back to the 1960s 365. We gave a tribute spec in the Oro Chiaro over the Cremo and Arocco interior. We've done already over 5,000 miles with it, having taken delivery earlier this year, going on a massive road trip, bringing it back to Maranello, going to visit lots of things in the land of Ferrari, including the F50 Legacy Tour, chasing my absolute dream cars around that region of Italy before going via Monaco and eventually bringing it back home and using it for some shorter runs in the time since. I think it's amazing. You can fit a surprising amount of luggage in the car. It's phenomenally comfortable, obviously very fast, looks and sounds amazing. It is the ultimate of that kind of thing. The only downside is that it's quite expensive. In fact, my car came in with a new price of £443,000, which was more than I was expecting. I actually spec'd it so early that we didn't even yet have the price list. So it was a complete gamble on how it was going to turn out, and I just built it to the spec that I wanted, because that's ultimately the plan with all of these cars. Obviously, it's going down. It's a V12 Ferrari. They do that from new. They've always done that from new. The only exception are the limited series cars, and in recent years, the 812 GTS, because they've been a bit of a quirk of this. Today, I think it's probably worth about 375,000, something in that ballpark. So it would have lost 68,000, but it's going to continue to fall. It's where that sits. So our running total is now minus £388,000, which is horrible reading. But if you consider the amount of cars and the value of cars we've gone through, it's not that big as a percentage. And now is where it gets very interesting. The next car, the Ferrari SF90 XX, my first from new special series, Versione Speciale Ferrari model, a car that was in such high demand against all odds. After the regular SF90, the XX, significantly more extreme, but lots of fears of what the car would be like. And I think Ferrari absolutely nailed it. They made it fit in with hypercars. They gave the SF90 the looks that it needed to really be something special. Not only is it 1030 horsepower, but it sounds amazing. It looks incredible, even if my spec might be quite out there in Verde cars with the Oro Chiaro accents to match with the 12 Cilindri. But having taken delivery at the home of Top Gear, the Dunsfold Park test track, and then immediately again going off on road trips, taking it all over, in fact, SOC in Sardinia, having an amazing time all through Italy, joining a leg of the Gumball 3000 for the drive up towards the south of France. It's done 3,000 miles already, but I don't want to do too many with it because I don't want to spoil the experience of what that car's all about. But nonetheless, I think it's phenomenal. I've been lucky to drive lots of special Ferraris, and the SF90XX is really right up towards the very top of the list, which everybody who owns one says as well. It was incredibly expensive. The regular SF90 at $465 already felt quite expensive. The XX, with all of this level of atelier customization, came in at £805,000. So a very punchy car, but in a world where hypercars are 2, 3, maybe 4 million, 805 is actually a relative bargain, especially for the performance, the level of tech, and the look of the car on the road. What's interesting though, especially considering where we were before, minus 388,000, is that 805 in today's money, and UK cars are softer than the rest of the world, about 1.2 million, that car, plus 395,000, bringing us somehow to £7,000 in the green from one car. And I think that's a lot of how it goes with Ferrari. You lose big, you win some big, you play this thing that averages out in due course. I do want to add the most recent though, because I think it's very interesting. The Ferrari 458 Speciale. Taking delivery of the car and immediately doing 2,000 miles on it. This fairly unique spec in Avorio, this German taxi beige, as we often joke about it, but a historic colour that came from the 1957 250 Speciale, so linking back to that. A car that I bought having seen it go for sale a number of times in the past, but always just missing out for whatever reason, but couldn't this time. So we added it to the collection, took it straight away on the reunion tour with some of my YouTube colleagues and friends down to the south of France to be in Monaco with it 10 years after we did our first vlogging adventure back in the day. So it's already done about 2,000 miles because we went onwards to Italy to take it to Maranello before coming back to Monaco and transporting it back home to save the long 900-mile slog back. I bought it for 310,000, and I think the 458 Speciale is very interesting because the cheapest car for sale in the UK today that isn't a much higher mileage or a car with an issue of some description is actually nearly 400. So I'm going to put my car in at 350, and I think that could even be on the softer side. I think it's probably worth more than that. So plus 40,000, bringing us to a running total of plus 47,000 from all of the collection. My objective with these cars has never been investment. You know it from the channel. I like to drive them. We say no to garage queens. These are cars that are used, are driven, and are shared through the channel. Of course, if I had kept them as delivery mileage, the figures I would have just quoted you would be significantly higher. In fact, to let you in on a little secret, when I had just taken delivery of the SF90XX, a private individual made me an offer significantly higher than the value I just gave you. But I have no plans to sell this car because I bought it because I want to drive it. The same was the case with the Ford GT when it was new. In fact, even the Zenvo when I had just got it. But for me, these are cars that are built and engineered to be driven. So that's exactly what we do here on the channel. It's exactly what I enjoy sharing with you as well through these videos. So the fact that when I look at this entire collection of cars and think that they're still approximately worth overall what they had cost, not taking into account inflation, not taking into account running costs, and not taking into account the revenues that have been generated along the way, but roughly speaking, evens on the purchase price point, I think we're doing pretty well. I consider that a win at the end of the day. It balances out. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you like videos like this, check out the one right over there. But that's it for this time, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.